Not just canceled health insurance policies. It's not just higher medical costs and new taxes. It's not just reduced choice. There's more. In virtually all states, young adults are watching health care premiums skyrocket. For young adults age 27, here's what's happening because of Obamacare. In Arkansas, premiums are up 171%. Georgia, up 168%. Arizona, up 157%. Texas, up 100%. Obamacare is doing the exact opposite of what the president promised. Imagine that. Meantime, in Maryland, the cost of the failed Obamacare state exchange is growing.
Federal inspectors are now in Maryland investigating how top leaders within the O'Malley-Brown administration spent those federal taxpayer dollars. This is Maryland's Attorney General is asking the governor to bring in outside counsel to conduct an investigation at the state level. A request that's gaining support.
Have them look into what's going on, who knew what, who has responsibility, and why this thing has now escalated to over $300 million.
Last week, board members of Maryland's Health Exchange voted to scrap its current information technology system and replace it with a system being used in Connecticut, a decision that is going to cost taxpayers at least an additional $30 to $40 million.
It's a disaster. In Maryland, 73,000 people lost their insurance because of Obamacare. So, how many people actually signed up in Maryland? 60,000. A net loss. It's a joke. So what about those people who missed the deadline but want to sign up through Obamacare? Joining me now, private medicine advocate and Obamacare expert, Patricia Newman.
Hi.
Patty, hi. So here we have another angle on this, these tentacles of the octopus Obamacare.
Yeah.
We have the deadline. The original deadline was March 31. Then they said that a few people could extend it till April 15, which is tomorrow, by the way. What about these people who didn't hit either of those deadlines? What do they do?
Well, they supposedly missed the deadline, and they won't be able to sign up until November of this year, so the end of the year. However, they've written a couple of little loopholes into the system so that that may not be necessarily the case. Some of the major loopholes are, let's say you have a qualifying life-changing event, like you get married, you have a child, or you're insured already through an employer and then you lose your job and have to go and search for another insurance. But they also threw in a really interesting type of mental condition called a temporary cognitive disability. Now, if you ask me what that means, I would translate it as somebody coming into the doctor's office and going, I just don't know what happened.
Well, those would be all the people who have signed up for Obamacare, right? Well, but in all seriousness, this is a very kind of a vague loophole. Is that the point you're making?
Well, what it means is if you find a physician that is not ethical, you may be able to get a doctor's note that says you just didn't understand. You had a temporary cognitive disability. You didn't understand, therefore, now here's your doctor's note and you can go and sign up now. You know, I gotta give credit to this, you know, open closed enrollment period, because you don't want people to abuse it. You don't want them to sign up only when they're sick. So I understand the meaning behind it and the economic consequences of it, but it's kind of a joke because, you know, human condition, they will work around it.
Right. So what happens if I signed up for Obamacare through the exchange, or one of the exchanges, the federal one or some of the state ones, and I've used my health care plan or even haven't used it, and I don't like it? Can I change it now? Is that a qualifying event?
No, you're stuck. And not only that, something that has never happened before, which is this same rule applies to the private market. Let's say I have a premium right now, an individual plan with a premium, and suddenly I get a notice, you know, next month that my premium's changing, it's going up, that there's certain things that were covered that are not going to be covered anymore, that are not within those basic benefits. And then you normally would be able to go to your broker and say, okay, well, I want to change my plan. Too bad. You're stuck till November.
Let me ask you something. Do you blame these kids, these 27-year-olds, as we just pointed out? That was just an age that we picked to compare policies, right? And in Arkansas, those policies have gone up 171% under Obamacare. Do you blame these kids not signing up? I mean,
not at all.
It's crazy.
Because, you know, when I was that age, I didn't have an insurance plan. I was working on getting my first business started. I didn't want to waste money on a policy where, you know, percentage-wise speaking, you are not likely to get sick. And if you do get sick, it's cheaper to go see your family doctor and pay, you know, $95 for an office visit than pay all year worth of premiums. It's not. I understand it, and if they're standing up for the right not to be told what to do, then I thoroughly understand it and support that.
Right, and so what they're saying is essentially, hey, go ahead and fine me, and I'll pay the fine, the minimum fine that it is this year, say it's $90 or something like that, right? Here's the statistic I would like to see, and I don't think we're ever going to see it, because we'd have to get it, you know, not only through the Obama administration, but we'd have to get it through the IRS, and that is the amount of people that are defaulting to the penalty, A, and B, how many people they're actually collecting money from. Do you ever think we'll see those numbers? I
don't think so. I mean, they wrote it in a way that it's going to be very hard for the IRS to even collect those penalties, because if you file taxes, they do not owe you a refund, then they cannot take your property away or take it out of your paycheck. They wrote it in a way that wouldn't be damaging, because that would have been very unpopular. So I don't think they're going to be able to quantify that.
All right, real quick, MinuteClinics. This is actually part of or written into the Obamacare. These are the little clinics at CVS or Walgreens or something like that. How does that relate to the Obamacare picture now?
Well, there's a newfound item that we were not aware of in the industry, and that is that these mini clinics are not going to be subject to malpractice insurance policies. There's a change in the law that says because they're going to be manned by nurse practitioners and physician assistants, that relationship that you have with that professional is not considered a doctor-patient relationship. Therefore, CVS, Walgreens, Target, anybody that opens one of these Minute Clinics are not going to have to buy a policy. The problem with that is you wait till one of these patients has a reaction to an immunization, a condition that gets complicated. They treat it as an upper respiratory infection, and it happens to be a pneumonia. And then they're going to think they can come back and sue, and they won't be able to.
So the Obamacare people built this in as like some sort of safety net, because they knew Obamacare was going to be a disaster. It wasn't going to work. So they built in this kind of safety net with no liability for the practitioners.
Right, because they won't have enough physicians. You remember that part. The other part is that you remember when CVS decided they're not going to sell cigarettes and they're going to lose $2 billion worth of their income. Well, now you see why the president was so happy. They were working on this deal for them to make way more than $2 billion in you know, they're going to have the PAs prescribing the medication. The patient's going to turn around and buy the prescription right there at the Minute Clinic and get a 20% coupon for anything else they buy. So stark laws that limit a physician from self-referring are not going to apply to them either.
Yeah, so, and no legal exposure. It's amazing. Patty, thanks for all that.
Thank you.
Coming up next, the NRA pulls the trigger on a candidate in Kentucky as the Daily Ledger continues.